The heating array died at 0300 hours on the coldest night Velthury Station had seen in 11 years. Warden Sivri heard the alert chime and felt her blood chill before the temperature even dropped. She was a Keth, six-limbed, insect-framed, her exoskeleton designed for dry warmth. The 41 children sleeping in the dormitory wings behind her were Keth, Vresi, and Delani, three species whose cold tolerance ranged from poor to catastrophic. She pulled up the diagnostic panel. The thermal core was dead. Not damaged. Not malfunctioning. Dead. A cascade failure in the primary fuel cells, two backup relays scorched beyond use, and the tertiary manual override, which required physical access through 3 meters of subfloor crawl space, had jammed. Outside, the surface temperature of Calvas 4 was minus 71 degrees. Inside, the dormitory was already reading minus 4 and falling. She sent distress calls to Velthury Station's municipal emergency line. Automated response. * all emergency thermal units are deployed to the harbor collapse. Estimated availability, 14 hours. * 14 hours. The children would not survive 14 hours. Sivri was composing a second message, a desperate broadcast to any vessel in orbital range, when the outer service door beeped. Someone had already answered. Petty Officer Dale Murchison had been doing a supply run for the Karen Witch, a humanitarian aid freighter currently docked at Velthury's North Port. He was not supposed to be anywhere near the Delani Quarter. He had taken a wrong turn. He had been following a stray cat, or what he thought was a cat. It turned out to be a Vresi groundhound, and he had ended up on the wrong street entirely. He was a broad man, Dale Murchison, wide-shouldered, red-cheeked from the cold, wearing a massive insulated coat the color of dried blood that his crewmates had been teasing him about for months. He had a thick brown beard salted with frost, a wool cap pulled low over his ears, and 2 large duffel bags of emergency rations slung across his back that made him look, as his captain often said, like someone had given a mountain a job. He saw the light on at the orphanage, saw Warden Sivri's face through the small window in the service door, frantic and reaching for a comm unit, and he knocked. She opened the door. Cold poured in. "You need help," Dale said. It was not a question. Sivri stared at him. She had dealt with humans twice before, once during a trade dispute, once at a medical supply summit. Neither time had a human simply appeared at her door in the dark and stated the obvious like it was a complete plan. "Our heating array has failed," she said. 41 children. The temperature. How cold is it in there? Minus 4 and falling. The Delani cubs, her voice cracked. Their thermal minimum is plus 12. They will begin to suffer in. Okay. Dale stepped inside and dropped his bags. He looked at the space, a wide corridor, doors leading to dormitory wings, a community room with tables and low-cushioned platforms. "Where's the junction panel for the heating system?" "You are a supply technician. I'm a petty officer on a humanitarian freighter. I can fix most things that aren't currently on fire. Where's the panel?" She showed him. The children woke up cold. The Keth young were the first to stir, their antennae twitching at the drop in temperature, their exoshells clicking with discomfort. Then the Vresi cubs, whose thick fur had kept them sleeping longer, began to whimper and press together in knots of shared warmth. The Delani were the worst. They were the smallest, the most temperature-sensitive, and the first to cry. Sivri moved between the wings, pulling thermal blankets from emergency stores. Not enough, never enough, and trying to keep the children calm. She could hear, through the floor grates, the sounds of Dale Murchison working, banging, muttering, something that sounded like creative profanity. More banging. Then, "I need the manual override. It's jammed. Do you have a heat torch?" She found one and passed it down through the access grate. More sounds. A long silence. Then, Sivri. "Yes. I can't fix the core. The fuel cells are cooked. But I can patch a partial bypass through the tertiary relay and run heat to 2 of your 3 wings. Not full heat. Maybe plus 8, plus 9. The Delani need 12. I know. I'll figure the rest out. Give me 15 minutes. She went back to the children. The Delani cubs had gathered in the community room, 6 of them, the youngest only 18 months old. They were small and pale-furred and shaking. Their eyes were wide and dark in the emergency lighting. One of them, a female called Vivi, whom Sivri had raised since she was found on a derelict transport at 6 weeks old, was crying silently, curled around the youngest, trying to share heat from a body that had precious little left to give. Sivri sat with them and did what she could. Then the floor access hatch opened, and Dale Murchison climbed out of the crawl space. He was covered in grime and insulation fiber. His coat was scorched on one sleeve. He looked at the Delani children, clustered together and shaking under a pile of inadequate blankets. And his face did something that Sivri had no word for in Keth, a softening and a hardening at the same time, like a decision being made in real time. He sat down on the floor in the middle of them. He unzipped his coat. "Come here," he said. They stared at him. He was enormous. He smelled like metal and burned plastic and something else, something warm and complex that Sivri would later learn was called cinnamon, residue from the spiced tea he had been drinking before his wrong turn. "I'm warm," he said simply. "Humans run hot. Come here." Vivi moved first. She was the bravest of them, always had been. She crept forward and pressed her small pale body against Dale's side. He wrapped one arm around her and pulled her close, and she went still. The others followed. One by one, the 6 Delani cubs burrowed into the space around Dale Murchison like he was a furnace, and they were small, cold moons deciding to orbit something reliable. He wrapped his coat around as many as he could reach. The rest he pressed close with hands and arms that radiated heat like a biological heating unit. He did not move. He did not complain. He sat on the cold floor of the community room of an orphanage on a frozen world and held alien children until they stopped shaking. Sivri stood in the doorway and could not speak. The bypass held. By 0530, 2 of the 3 wings were reading +8. Not perfect, not warm, but survivable for Keth and Vresi. The Delani stayed in the community room, and Dale stayed with them, and at some point, Sivri could not say exactly when, they all fell asleep. 6 small pale-furred cubs, draped across a large human in a scorched red coat, rising and falling with his breathing like they had always known this was where they were supposed to be. Emergency thermal units arrived at 0840. The technicians who entered the community room stopped in the doorway and stared. One of them, a Vresi, old enough to have cultural context, made a soft sound. "What is it?" his partner asked. "There is an old story," the Vresi said quietly. "A human folk figure. He appears in the cold. He brings warmth. He carries things on his back." He looked at Dale, still asleep against the wall, the Delani cubs breathing slow and steady around him. "They call him Santa Claus, or something like that." Dale Murchison left Calvas 4 with his ship's supply manifest completed and a polite note from Warden Sivri that he did not fully understand, because it was written in Keth and the translation software he had rendered it through was clearly underpowered. But the last line came through clearly enough. "You arrived in the dark and brought warmth without being asked. This is the oldest form of kindness in any language. The children are well. Vivi asks if you are coming back. Asterisk." He folded the note and put it in his breast pocket, close to where his heart ran warm, the way human hearts always do. He told his captain he had taken a wrong turn. His captain looked at the scorch mark on his sleeve, the grime in his beard, and the small pale fur tuft caught on his coat button that was clearly not from any earth animal. "Sure you did," she said. Dale smiled and didn't explain. Some things didn't need explaining. Some people just ran warm. And sometimes, on a frozen world in the dark of a broken night, that was exactly enough.